And in studio for this conversation, we have lawyer Steve Ogola as well as governance expert Kevin Osido. Many thanks for joining us in studio this morning, gentlemen. A lot is making headlines in the political scene. We are waiting for the president to announce his cabinet nominees. Not sure whether that's going to be done today. It is one of the things that we will be discussing later on. We'll also be discussing the fact that NASA leaders have vowed to open a case against CS Fred Matiang'i as well as Inspector General of Police Joseph Boynet. But let's begin, first of all, with us making headlines on all the dailies, and that is the arrest of one David Ndii, economist and NASA strategist. A lot has already been said about his arrest and the manner in which it happened. Let me start with you, Kevin. Even as you give your reaction as to how the arrest went, does this signal Kenya's descent into outright intimidation?
Thanks, Michelle. First and foremost, I think this is very true to say that indeed we are seeing the coming back of lots of intimidation. And this is sadly to say is associated to politics. And for me, I think the bottom line should be the fact that Kenyans should not be treated to personal wars and issues that affect individuals. And this, to me, probably is to relate it to a couple that already have internal issues within their marriage, and so they go to social media, WhatsApp groups or Facebook or Twitter, and you begin to post your internal issues there. So I think that because if you listen to, for example, the economist's wife, she gave us a relationship that has been going on between her and His Excellency the President and the family, right from 2014, and how she said she was in the diaspora and the President made a special appeal for her to be brought on board to be able to carry forward a special project, which I think was meant to be a government project. And so the fact that that relationship did not work as was expected then, I think Kenyans have serious issues that they are dealing with. And His Excellency the President and the government have, in my view, serious issues that they need to be dealing with. Of course, not to delink it from issues relating to NASA and legitimacy issues that people are talking about, but much more fundamentally is that Kenyans want to have a space to just live their lives, to be able to make decisions on issues, serious issues that affect them, and that sometimes I think that these are diversionary tactics and things that are meant to take off the hearts and souls of Kenyans from very serious service delivery issues, both at county and national levels. But of course, we also know that we are coming from a political process that has been much more heated. It's been much more antagonistic to an extent. And so we expect that this kind of activities and projects by different houses are going to continue moving on. But my special appeal would be that we need to find a much more amicable way to get this to a halt, or rather to a stop, so that this country, this beautiful country, can move on in a manner that carries everyone. Because Ndii belongs to a family. He is a father, he is an uncle, he is a brother. And everyone that is more or less involved in this process has someone that they are looking up to, that is looking up to them. And these people just want to have their lives moving on. So I think that these politics, we need to, as a country and as a people, as Kenyans, and for the sake of this great republic, find a way of moving forward, and not necessarily to accept and move on, but to find a way in which we can be able to have all these issues move on. And much more fundamental, again, Michelle, is that institutions that need to do their work just need to do their work. It's not proper for the police to go and arrest someone who is just having a holiday, you know, because of course, if you are summoned by the police needs to be able to ensure that they produce the relevant and necessary documents, for instance, arrest warrants or summons for that nature. But to follow someone all the way from Kwale, then you bring the person overnight to Nairobi, and then within some time, you release this person on bond of 10,000 shillings without any charge, Michelle. I think this country has come from far. We are learning lots of lessons, but it is only fair that we are able to live the lessons that we learn on a daily basis.
Right.
Yeah.
Steve, just borrowing from that, I mean, David Ndii is a man who's been very vocal, very critical about President Uhuru Kenyatta's administration, President Uhuru Kenyatta's governance in the past 5 years. It is still unclear why he was arrested, but according to NASA officials, he was arrested because of his involvement in planning for the People's Assembly and the big event they will be having on the 12th of December. December. But I mean, the Jubilee government has already sworn in President Uhuru Kenyatta. They're already in power with the instruments of power. Does the kind of arrest we saw yesterday signal tension within Parliament with regard to the utterances being made by the opposition?
Thanks, Michelle. First of all, let me attempt the question on the law on arrest, so that Kenyans can evaluate for themselves whether that law is complied with or not. We have two types of arrest based on what we call cognizable offenses and non-cognizable offenses. If you are arresting based on cognizable offenses, you don't need an arrest warrant. You see someone committing an offense, you arrest them, you arraign them in court, prefer charges, then they are released on a cash bail, and then the case progresses to its logical conclusion. We have non-cognizable offenses where you don't see someone committing an offense, but you know an offense may have been committed. So an arrest is part of the continuing process of investigation. Now, before you effect arrest for non-cognizable offenses, you need to demonstrate that you've exhausted other measures, such as asking this person to present himself at a police station. If he fails to present himself at a police station, then you may be required to extract a warrant of arrest. Why this country thinks that you cannot, why the police thinks that they cannot utilize clear provisions of the law that requires them to extract warrants of arrest. Rarely do we see police officers extracting warrants of arrest, having summoned someone to attend to a police station and they have failed to turn up. I think what I should tell the police is this. There's a presumption in law, Michelle, that public officers act in good faith and to protect and promote the public interest. Can the police demonstrate, or can it be argued, you know, with evidence and certainty, that the commando-style kind of arrest on David Ndii matches the expectation that officers will act in good faith and to the public benefit? Now, one would have expected that when you are arresting David Ndii, that man of style, there must have been a serious offense committed, or he was about to commit a serious offense that failing to arrest him in that manner would have occasioned a serious breach of public security, safety and security to a greater public. And therefore, the arrest was necessary to protect the public benefit. Otherwise, if you arrest someone, you detain him, and then you release him on a cash bill of 10,000 shillings, which means the offense is going to be charged with. It's just a misdemeanor. Offenses that attract fines of 10,000, those are offenses that you could just summon someone, come and record a statement, you're going to prefer charges upon you. I think the police should know that you cannot rely on raw power and fear, you get, to execute your mandate. In fact, that is not consistent with an approach that requires public confidence building in the policy. One way of sort of rehabilitating or reversing, sort of not necessarily reversing, but one way of undoing partly the harm done is to issue an apology. An explanation, first of all, why the arrest was made in such a dramatic fashion. In the absence of an explanation that can appeal to the right-minded Kenyans, an apology would do from the higher-ups, you get. That way will help Kenyans to maintain a level of perception that police care for working in a manner that makes the public be endeared to it.
So what we're saying basically is that the procedure was not followed.
The procedure was not followed, but then there's another ripple effect. If you are arresting the elite in this country, such as David Ndii, in such manner, what is the message communicated to the common man? You and I walking down the streets, you know, your ability to question the police is effectively diminished, seeing that the elite in this country, including people like David Ndii, prominent public intellectuals, are being arrested and harassed. You know, in fact, this is more of persecution than intended prosecution. What it communicates to the Mwananchi is that, listen, you can actually be harassed by police officers down there, and you'll have nowhere to go to. Big people are being harassed and being harassed. I think the police should review their approach to work.
All right. And every time you say the police need to review, but every time we see instances like this, the police always have one line: we are waiting for orders from above.
In law, let me say this in law. There is, in this dispensation, honestly, there is no room for orders from above. Every officer, you take charge. You take charge of your actions. You're supposed to make a judgment call and say, that's police officers like the military that work on orders. police officers are supposed to apply their discretion. If, as the officer in charge of that operation, you have been asked to, let's say, strangely from orders from above, are you sure in law, unless you're telling us that you have no detailed understanding of the law governing your operation, but are you sure in law that what you're about to do, number one, is within the limits of the law, and number two, inspires public confidence? Because applying the law itself without caring about the public perception in which the manner in which that law is applied will not help this country and will certainly not help the police. But I want to tell Kenyans that all this is not without remedy. If the police persist in this path of harassment, intimidation, use of raw power, fear, as their own ways of working, then it's not beyond any Kenyans to move to the High Court. One, David Ndii, for the shock and trauma, maybe whatever he's doing there, and also maybe loss of work, he could sue the police, for abuse of office, and also for adequate compensation. I think when the government begins to lose a lot of money as a consequence of abuse of police powers, then maybe, just maybe, they may land. Because sanity. It is not true that the police have not been sensed personally. And I say that this with the benefit of knowledge that if Mr. Wino is, for instance, the police spokesman is watching, he knows that I've been part of a team that have trained police officers on the United Nations basic human rights standards for law enforcement officers. What you do when you're enforcing the law while observing human rights. In fact, police officers, they're supposed to be #1 human rights defenders because the duty to protect and promote rights fundamentally belongs to the government. It's a primary duty of the government. But arrest, actually, there must be a need to protect another right for you to be able to arrest. The manner in which you're performing your duties must match the expectation of the law. Kenyan law, by virtue of Article 2.5 and 2.6, is international law, including international human rights law. They form part of our local laws.
Right.
A robust constitution, a robust international human rights framework, all of which require, but they are common sense issues. Because I've always argued, the law is not removed from common sense.
All right.
You get?
Let me pause you there, Steve, just a moment as we take a break here on Morning Express. Remember, this is the political point. We're taking a look at us being making headlines in the political scene. We take a short commercial break. Do stay with us. Remember, our hashtag is Morning Express KTN. You can also tweet me directly at Michelle Ngela. Do give us your thoughts on the conversation in studio this morning.